In a kingdom of power and pride, one man's faith stood unshaken. Daniel, a servant of God, prayed with courage even when a law declared it a crime. Jealous officials plotted his downfall, and a king's decree sealed his fate. Yet, in the darkness of a den filled with roaring lions, God's light would shine. This is the story of Daniel in the lion's den, faith under fire, and the God who delivers. Daniel, now an old man, had served faithfully under kings for decades. His wisdom, honesty, and integrity had earned him respect, but also the jealousy of corrupt officials who wanted his power. Each day, without fail, Daniel opened his window toward Jerusalem and prayed 3 times, just as he had done since his youth. The golden light of the setting sun poured into his room as his voice rose in prayer, filled with gratitude and trust in God. Outside, hidden in the shadows, jealous eyes watched him. They whispered among themselves, smirking, knowing that Daniel's devotion to his God would be the very weapon they used against him. For them, this wasn't just about law or loyalty to the king. It was about eliminating the one man whose righteousness exposed their corruption. Yet Daniel, unaware of their scheming or perhaps simply unconcerned, prayed with peace and courage. His faith was his anchor. The contrast was striking. One old man bowing in humility before God, while dark plots formed just outside his door. The officials gathered in secret chambers, away from the king's eyes. Their voices were low, sharp, and dripping with envy. "This Daniel," one sneered, "he has too much influence. The king trusts him above all of us. If we do not act now, he will rule everything." Another leaned forward, whispering with a cunning smile, "We will never find fault in him unless it is about the law of his God." Their eyes glimmered with malice. They began drafting a scheme, one that would trap Daniel not by dishonesty or corruption, but by the very faith that made him great. The law of the Medes and Persians, once signed, could not be revoked. That was their key. They devised a decree: no man could pray to any god or man except King Darius for 30 days. Anyone who broke this law would be cast into the den of lions. To them, it was perfect. They imagined Daniel's window open, his hands raised to heaven, his devotion sealing his doom. In the flickering torchlight, their shadows stretched long across the walls, mirroring the darkness in their hearts. The plot was set. In the royal court, the officials presented their decree to King Darius. With flattering words, they bowed low, stroking his pride. "O king, live forever. Let a decree be written that for 30 days no man may petition any god or man but you." Darius, pleased by their words and blinded by their flattery, agreed. The law sounded harmless, even honorable, a way to solidify loyalty. With a heavy seal of wax pressed under his signet ring, the decree was made unchangeable. Yet as soon as the decree was signed, Darius unknowingly stepped into the official's trap. Later, when word reached him that Daniel had continued to pray to his God, the king's heart sank. He realized too late what the officials had schemed. Regret swept over him like a storm, but the law of the Medes and Persians could not be undone. He spent the day searching for a way to save Daniel, but his efforts were useless. Bound by his own decree, he faced the dreadful truth. He had condemned the man he most trusted. His face grew weary, his heart heavy with sorrow. The trap was complete. Despite the decree, Daniel remained unwavering. He could have closed his windows, prayed silently, or hidden in secret, but Daniel's faith was not something to be concealed. As he had always done, he opened his window toward Jerusalem. Kneeling, he lifted his voice in prayer, giving thanks to the God who had guided him all his life. The city stretched out beyond him, but Daniel's eyes were fixed on heaven. His heart was calm. To him, faithfulness to God was worth more than life itself. Outside, the jealous officials gathered, smirking as they saw him praying. Their trap had worked. They rushed to the king, eager to accuse. "O king, did you not sign the decree? Daniel, your servant, pays no heed. He prays 3 times a day to his God." The words cut deep, into Darius's heart. Yet Daniel remained undisturbed. Even as guards stormed his home and seized him, he neither resisted nor pleaded. His strength came from above. His enemies saw defiance, but heaven saw devotion. The officials wasted no time. They barged into Daniel's chamber, their footsteps echoing like thunder against the stone floors. The guards seized him roughly, binding his hands with ropes. Still, Daniel's face remained calm, his eyes steady. He did not struggle or argue. The decree was read aloud, almost mockingly, as though they relished his downfall. "Daniel of Judah," they declared, "you have broken the law of the king." Behind them, the officials smirked, their victory nearly complete. As they dragged him through the streets, people whispered in shock. Some shook their heads, wondering why such a man would risk everything just to pray. Others, though, admired his courage, marveling at his steadfast faith. Daniel's silence was louder than any defense. He trusted God, even now. Meanwhile, word reached King Darius. When he heard that Daniel had been arrested, his face fell. He tried desperately to find a loophole in the law, but the officials stood firm, reminding him that no decree of the Medes and Persians could be changed. Bound by his own words, the king was powerless. Daniel, the man he most trusted, was condemned. That night, King Darius paced endlessly within the palace halls. His golden crown felt heavy, his royal robes meaningless. All the wealth and power of his kingdom could not undo the trap that had ensnared Daniel. He thought of Daniel's loyalty, his wisdom, his unwavering faith. How could such a man deserve death? Again and again the king searched for a way out. He summoned advisors, questioned laws, sought every possible path to reverse the decree, but every attempt led to the same conclusion. Nothing could be changed. The law was final. The officials who had schemed against Daniel watched closely, ensuring the king had no room to maneuver. At last, with sorrow etched deep into his face, Darius realized what he must do. His heart broke as he gave the order, his voice trembling. The man he most admired would be cast into the lion's den. The king had never felt so weak, so helpless. His authority, once a source of pride, now weighed upon him like chains. In his soul, a desperate prayer formed, not to the gods of Persia, but to the God Daniel served. The moment arrived. In the fading light of evening, soldiers led Daniel to the pit. The ground trembled with the growls and roars of hungry lions below. Torches flickered, casting eerie shadows against the stone walls. Crowds gathered at a distance, whispering anxiously, straining to see. The officials stood proudly, their plan complete. King Darius, however, walked beside Daniel, his face pale with grief. With trembling words he whispered, "Your God, whom you serve continually, may he deliver you." Daniel looked up at the king and gave a calm nod. He had no fear. Slowly, he was lowered into the den, the sound of chains rattling, the scrape of stone, the snapping jaws of lions echoed all around. The massive stone was rolled across the opening, sealing Daniel inside. Darius pressed his royal seal upon the stone, ensuring no one could interfere. Yet as the echoes of the final rumble faded, silence filled the night. Inside, darkness swallowed Daniel. The air was heavy with the scent of beasts, their eyes glinting in the shadows. Every heart watching trembled in fear, wondering how long he would last. In the darkness of the den, lions stirred. Their massive paws scraped against the dirt, their deep growls vibrating through the cavern. Daniel stood silently, his hands lifted in prayer. The beasts drew closer, their hot breath surrounding him. Just when it seemed they would strike, a blinding light filled the den. An angel of the Lord appeared, radiant and powerful, standing beside Daniel. The lions halted, their growls silenced, their fierce eyes softened, and they lay down like gentle lambs at Daniel's feet. The angel stretched out a hand of protection, and peace settled in the chamber. Daniel lowered himself to his knees, his heart overflowing with gratitude. He was not alone. God had sent his messenger, and no harm would come to him. Outside the den, the world was silent.
unaware of the miracle unfolding beneath the earth. The king lay sleepless in his palace, fasting through the night, consumed by sorrow. But inside the den, Daniel rested, surrounded by lions who no longer threatened him, but rather bore witness to the power of the living God. At the first light of dawn, King Darius rushed to the lion's den. His royal robe flowed behind him as he ran, his heart pounding with both dread and hope. Arriving breathless, he commanded the stone be rolled away. His voice cracked as he cried out, "Daniel, servant of the living God, has your God, whom you serve continually, been able to deliver you from the lions?" For a moment, silence filled the air. Then, from the depths of the pit, a steady voice rose. "O king, live forever. My God sent his angel and shut the lions' mouths, so they have not hurt me." Relief swept over the king like a flood. Tears welled in his eyes as Daniel was lifted from the den. His robes were unscathed, not a scratch on his body. The crowd gasped in wonder. King Darius embraced him like a long-lost son, his joy uncontainable. The miracle was undeniable. Daniel's God had delivered him. The night of anguish had ended in triumph. Faith had overcome fear. Rage burned in the eyes of King Darius as he turned to the officials who had plotted against Daniel. "Bring them," he commanded. The very men who had schemed now trembled in fear. Along with their families, they were thrown into the den they had prepared for Daniel. Before they even reached the floor, the lions leapt upon them, crushing their bones and proving once again that only God's hand had restrained the beasts. Justice was swift. Yet the story did not end in vengeance, but in glory. Darius issued a new decree to every people, nation, and language under his reign. "I make a decree that in every dominion of my kingdom, men must tremble and fear before the God of Daniel. For he is the living God, steadfast forever. His kingdom shall not be destroyed, and his dominion shall endure to the end." The people rejoiced, and Daniel prospered under Darius's reign. The story of one man's faithfulness had changed the heart of a king and revealed the power of God to an entire empire. The story of Daniel and the lion's den reminds us that true faith stands firm no matter the cost. Daniel's courage shows that prayer is stronger than fear, and God's protection is greater than any danger. Just as God delivered Daniel, he is faithful to watch over all who trust him. One man's obedience turned a nation's heart toward the living God, and so can ours. God shut the lions' mouths and delivered Daniel. He will also protect those who trust in him. Daniel's story reminds us that true faith does not hide in fear, but stands boldly, even in the face of danger. God proved that he alone is in control, able to shut the mouths of lions and turn the schemes of the wicked back on themselves. Just as Daniel's faith brought glory to God before kings and nations, our faith today can shine in a world that desperately needs his light. When we remain faithful, God remains faithful. And that is the unshakable truth of Daniel in the lion's den. Daniel's story reminds us that God is faithful to those who trust him, even in the face of lions. If this story inspired you, don't forget to like this video, leave a comment about what you learned, and subscribe to our channel for more powerful Bible stories. Together, let's keep sharing God's word with the world.